This is the epitome of flirting. Jack effortlessly conquered this blonde bombshell with just one sentence. Jack is a handsome man who appeals to people of all ages, from centenarians to young girls. Hardly anyone can resist his charming face. He works as a representative for a pharmaceutical company, and every time he visits a hospital, a nurse falls victim to his charm. One day, Jack went to visit a doctor and encountered a girl as beautiful as an angel. At first sight, he was captivated by her beauty. When Annie took off her coat, Jack couldn't help but sneak a few more glances, only to receive a beating from Annie in return. It turned out his briefcase had betrayed Jack's identity, but even when exposed, Jack didn't forget his usual tricks to keep flirting. Annie's previous two boyfriends were also pharmaceutical representatives, and she wasn't fond of men who peddled drugs. With a raised middle finger, she turned and left, but the more she resisted, the more excited Jack became. He quickly got Annie's phone number and contacted her. Unable to contain the attraction between them at a coffee shop on the street corner, Jack's usual routine was to compliment the girl's beautiful and captivating eyes, but Annie was clearly not impressed by such cheesy lines. Yet, she couldn't control her trembling hands, revealing her nervousness. While Jack was thinking about taking things further, Annie answered the question for him in advance. They quickly established a relationship, but Annie made it clear they would only talk about romance, not love. Annie, as it turns out, suffers from Parkinson's disease. Each of her previous boyfriends grew deeply attached to her, only to heartlessly leave when her condition worsened. This left Annie wary of entering new relationships. However, Jack didn't see it that way. He would take Annie out to enjoy exquisite meals, share stories from work, but no matter how close they became, they couldn't break through the barrier of being just lovers. Yet, Jack found himself gradually developing indescribable feelings for this girl through their casual interactions. But when Annie rejected him outright, storming out of the house, Jack waited for her at the corner. The moment Annie realized, her eyes filled with disbelief. She couldn't believe this man had been waiting for her all along. The eyes of love cannot be concealed. Jack's actions had shattered the wall guarding Annie's heart, and now he no longer concealed his feelings. Despite Annie laying out strict conditions, Jack agreed to them all, and the two officially confirmed their relationship. In the following days, they shared countless tender moments. While Jack worked diligently, Annie would quietly be by his side, her eyes filled with adoration for this gentleman. They say luck favors the lovesick, and Jack began to soar in his career, eventually becoming the industry's top boss with assets worth billions. In their life together, Annie would capture every moment with Jack through the lens of her camera. However, all happiness is fleeting. One day, while Annie was editing photos, she suddenly felt weak in her limbs. She walked to the mirror to pick up her medication, but couldn't even muster the strength to twist open the bottle cap. The more she struggled, the more desperate she felt. It turned out her Parkinson's disease had worsened. Annie turned away from Jack, wanting to cry but afraid to do so, fearing he might hear her. She knew her condition would only affect Jack's work. Perhaps feeling powerless led Annie to start lashing out at Jack. She tried to push him away, not wanting her illness to hinder his future. Under Annie's relentless outbursts, as she hoped, Jack disappointedly walked away. At that moment, Annie's heart shattered once again, like a cup smashed on the ground. Hearing Annie's heartbreaking cries, Jack couldn't bear to leave. He held Annie tightly, comforting her softly. He took Annie to an event for Parkinson's patients, where she felt incredibly relaxed and free, shedding the oppression she had been carrying. This was the first time Annie had felt such ease and joy. Eventually, unable to resist any longer, Annie kissed Jack, but Jack did much more than that. He posted a reward for Parkinson's research online and took Annie to seek medical help everywhere they could. They visited hospitals big and small across the country, but each attempt ended in failure. Yet, even so, Jack never gave up. The repeated disappointments made Jack start to lose his temper with doctors. Through the glass, Annie could feel Jack's increasingly unstable emotions. After much deliberation, Annie decided to break up with Jack. She knew her condition would only drag this man down, and she couldn't bear to see the man she deeply loved living so miserable. Annie walked away without looking back, perhaps because she loved this man too much. Annie couldn't tolerate her own selfishness, so leaving Jack was the only gift she could give him. On this snowy evening, two lovers deeply in love with each other were about to part ways, and even the successful man in his career couldn't help but have red eyes. Annie's eyes filled with tears, but she had to say goodbye. This time, they truly parted ways completely. Since then, Annie had been avoiding Jack, not picking up his calls, while Jack received news of his promotion to CEO in Chicago. At the celebration dinner, Jack encountered Annie once again, and their eyes still conveyed love. Just when they thought they might reconcile, Annie suddenly learned of Jack's impending relocation to Chicago. She turned and left, She couldn't stand in the way of Jack's future. Back home, as Jack tittied up, he noticed a videotape on the table. Unable to resist, he played it, and memories flooded his mind. At that moment, Jack realized how important Annie was to him. He couldn't lose her. Without hesitation, he rushed out, following the direction Annie often went. Fortunately, Jack managed to catch up to Annie, pouring out his deep and passionate confession. Seeing the sincerity in his eyes, tears flooded Annie's eyes once again. At that moment, it made me think that perhaps the best kind of love is being each other's healing remedy.